Welcome to The Fulcrum Point, the podcast that's exploring how Catholic education is making an impact on local communities and families across Western Washington. This show is brought to you by the Fulcrum Foundation, and I'm your host, Brian Callanan. So, summertime is upon us. School's out, right? Well, a number of families are still making decisions about where to enroll their children this coming fall. Plus, it's a time of transition for some teachers, too, which makes the world of education a lot busier than you might think in June, July, and August. In this episode, we're going to focus on how Catholic schools are marketing themselves, reaching out to students and teachers with new and innovative programs in a competitive educational landscape. And this goes far beyond recruiting. We're looking at the ways our Catholic schools are not only bringing in students and teachers, but retaining them. We're also discussing how quality Catholic education is connecting with one of the fastest growing but most underserved communities in the U.S. Plenty to learn about there. And we'll see how these efforts are paying off with outcomes that go far beyond the pomp and circumstance of a graduation celebration. We may not be at the poolside, but we're taking a deep dive on how and why Catholic education is thriving here in Western Washington. That's right here on the Fulcrum Point.
My name is Sophie Brennan, and I attended St. Luke's School and Holy Names Academy. My favorite part about attending Catholic school was the life lessons that were instilled with us as children, and I was so blessed to be able to learn strong values that I carry today as an adult. Catholic schools not only taught me how to be a good Catholic, but also just a good person in general, and I'm proud to be able to carry that as I grow older.
Joining me for this episode is Kristen Moore, Director of Marketing for the Office for Catholic Schools within the Archdiocese of Seattle. Thanks a lot for talking to me, Kristen.
Great to be here.
I was going to ask you about what you do, but then I thought maybe it's better to ask what you don't do, because I was thinking about this. We've talked about so many great programs that the Fulcrum Foundation is helping fund on this podcast. But in terms of the person who's thinking about the big questions of how do these programs get implemented, what's going to make these programs attractive to students and teachers, that's you.
That is me. I started here in the Office for Catholic Schools about 6 years ago. And what's interesting about my role is, it was funded by the Fulcrum Foundation. There was not my role in marketing and enrollment in the Office for Catholic Schools. Fulcrum made that possible. What's also great about my particular role is that I'm coming from the classroom. So I was a trained classroom teacher as well. I've also had 3 kids that have gone through Catholic schools. So I have been on what I like to say different sides of the desk over my career. And it gives me a unique perspective into what parents are looking for, how to position our schools, and really what our schools are doing right now and how we can be competitive in the educational landscape. Yeah. So this role keeps me busy, that is for sure.
Yeah, I know that. And we're going to talk about some of these different things throughout the show here. But I did want to get this overarching idea of what you're doing to bring students into Catholic schools, which is working, by the way. Nicholas Ford, the superintendent of Catholic schools, told me a few episodes ago, the 74 schools in the Archdiocese have seen 4 consecutive years of growth in enrollment, which is always good news. So that tells me you're recruiting students and retaining them. I wanted to get this idea of your overall approach to bringing students into our Catholic schools, because it just seems like a lot more than let's fill up the seats.
It absolutely is. You know, really our goal in our office works in a very much of an inside-out way. It's not just about a fancy marketing campaign. It's not putting together a sleek ad. We realize that our work, really from the marketing perspective, has to happen from inside out. Our classrooms have to be places where students feel like they belong so that they can learn. We need to have excellent teachers that are engaged and continue to learn themselves to bring best practices to our families. And also leadership. Leadership is so key in a successful school. So we're constantly working on all those internal pieces. And when we have that clicking, then when we reach out to the outside community, there's just what families see and what they're attracted to when they walk through that front door they experience. And so I think that's really been our tact in really attracting students to our schools. The reality is our number one source of marketing is word of mouth.
Yeah.
So our current community, our engaged families, our students that are being successful and successfully moving on to higher ed, they're talking about us.
Is that something you measure? Or, how did you hear about us? And does it often
We do.
come up?
Often our schools do at the local level on the application. We'll say, how did you hear about us? So yes, we are hearing. It's from a neighbor. It's from, a soccer coach or a soccer family that I sit next to every Saturday, that brought up and shared the excitement about their school community. So word of mouth still, I would say, is our number one. Some of the other things that we work on as we have 74 schools is like, what do our websites look like?
Yeah.
That is the first stop for a lot of parents.
I was going to say the word of mouth is important, but you got to have the
deliver.
front door of your
You've
business.
You've got to
looking
have the
right.
front
Yeah.
door. That is
Yeah.
your purpose. But you've got to be able to have a welcoming, user-friendly site where parents can engage and learn more about your school, and then possibly take the next step to scheduling a tour, coming to an open house, etc. So those really have been our strategies. What I do, because we have so many schools and our schools are doing a lot of their neighborhood marketing, is I bring new ideas, fresh perspectives, best practices. I do a lot of professional development on really pointed topics. Again, SEO for websites, having a hospitable front office. How do we work families through the enrollment process? What do each of those steps look like? The modern family, quite frankly, wants to be able to access things from their cell phone.
Right.
So if we have paper packets for them to fill out, that could be a barrier also.
I hadn't even thought about
You
it.
know,
Right.
I mean,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
modern parent needs efficient process. And so I work with schools on delivering that.
Yeah.
And what those processes could look like.
As I'm shuffling through my papers here and revealing how old I am, I get what you're saying here. I do want to go down one path with you, though. National research on Catholic education shows about 21% of the students in the Catholic school system are not Catholic. So that's about 1 out of every 5 kids. And in a place like Washington, which always seems to make the top 10 list of least religious states,
That
pray
is
for
true.
us out there, folks.
That's right.
This is something I'm sure you're paying attention to. So the fact is, you don't have to be Catholic to go to Catholic school. But how do you wrestle with that issue to make sure that Catholic schools are opening their doors to as many people as possible, but still keeping that Catholic identity that makes them special?
We approach our educational framework through a Catholic worldview, and we're very upfront about that. The beautiful thing is Catholic means universal. So
with a
we're-
small c, I got
That's right. And so truly our communities reflect that. We have students that are non-Christian, and then we have students that are other Christian faiths. For us, we're all working towards the same goal. We want to have students that have a spiritual component. We want to make sure that they're prepared academically, and we want to make sure that they understand their place in the global world. So those 3 pillars need to come together, and that's, as I like to say, is the secret sauce of Catholic education.
Okay.
Of course, we are Catholic.
With a capital C.
With a capital
Yeah,
C.
yeah.
And our students attend Mass, and they have religion classes, and they'll learn the theology of the Catholic Church. And that's a beautiful thing. And I think for a non-Catholic coming to our schools, what an interesting opportunity for their child to be exposed to a different faith tradition. And I think it's great for our Catholic students to be able to engage with a student from a different Catholic, from a different
This
faith
is reality. This
perspective.
is what you're going to face
This
in the
is the
world.
world.
Yeah.
This is the world. So I think we're preparing our students for what they're going to experience outside of our communities.
Yeah.
And I think we do a really good job of that.
Diversity can mean so many different
So
things
much.
when you talk about what that means within a school. And I feel like this is a part of that too. Yeah.
It is, absolutely. And we give a really safe space for children to be able to interact and engage and bring these issues forward.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what our world needs right now.
I hear what you're saying. I did want to talk about another trend that's playing out nationally and locally here. On the national level, 19% of Catholic school students are Hispanic or Latino. Again, we're talking about 1 out of 5 students there. This reflects a major demographic shift in our country. Hispanics or Latinos make up about 19% of the overall U.S. population, but they're projected to make up about 27% of our population by the year 2060, looking at census figures there. So the Hispanic and Latino population, I know that's rising in Western Washington too. When you hear those numbers, what does that say to you?
What it says to me is we have a huge opportunity. This community is growing, as you can see,
Oh, yeah.
rapidly in this country. And the gifts that this community brings is exactly what we need right now. I really believe the immigrant personality and family comes with gifts, huge gifts that we can benefit from. I think culture, language. When you really think about those statistics, in a very short amount of time, 1 in 4 babies born in the U.S. will be Latino. And so it is a community that we are called to serve. And we are beginning to do that very, very actively. Not only are we partnered with the University of Notre Dame, and they have a beautiful Alma initiative that has preparation for not only teachers, for how to create best practices in the classroom for an English language learner.
Yeah, this is ALMA, Advancing Latino and Multilingual Achievement. Keep going.
Exactly. In fact, I'll be there this Saturday.
Oh, great.
And I'm
You're
going to
talking
be a
about
part
it.
of that. Yes,
great.
I'm excited to be back and learn even more and present. I think really this community is also a community that is culturally Catholic. So it's a beautiful fit, I think, in terms of family culture with our Catholic schools. And we are actively engaging in work to really support and welcome our Latino families. One of the events that we established 2 years ago is called the Latino Summit. And it was a day where we bring the team from the University of Notre Dame in on a Friday for a full day of professional development for all of our teachers, staff, anyone in our schools. And we actually opened it up this year to staff in the parish as well, because our parishes are reflecting this same.
Sure.
And so day one was for all of our internal staff in our schools to learn more about how we can serve this community specifically. And then day two was Family Day. So our Latino families that are already currently in our Catholic schools, it was a day to come bring that community together, say thank you. We hear you. Help us to grow in this area.
And when we talk about growing, what are some of the programs that you are using to welcome in Latino families?
I think in terms of families, what we're really trying to create is a community. The University of Notre Dame terms it as madrinas. It's like a parent ambassador program that could function within a parent club, for example. But it could address some of the needs so that our parents can stay engaged with their children's education. If we're talking about a first-generation family, mom and dad may or may not speak English. Boy, that gets hard when you're trying to support your child's learning, maybe in the area of reading.
Yeah.
Or, their homework comes home and they need a little assistance, and you may not be able to understand what that homework assignment is from a language standpoint. So we want to empower our families to be actively engaged in their child's education. And by having them have their just own unique organic support through a parent ambassador program or a madrinas program, that allows then the school to come and work with that group specifically. One example would be a program that I led with my parent ambassador group when I was working at a school level. We had one of our reading specialists do a workshop for our Latino parents. We hired an interpreter. So she was able to actually walk our Latino parents through how do we use this online program that the schools are engaging with and the students are, and they have assignments in this particular platform. How do we help parents access that? And then we were actually able to show them a whole segment of this program that had books in Spanish. So what we want to do is we want our non-English speaking families to continue to cultivate their home language, because we know when there's a foundation of a home language, their English acquisition will be more successful.
Wow.
So
there's so much going on
one
there.
example.
Yeah, no, just one example. And I wanted to make sure I touched on one last piece with you as we're talking about students here, because in our last episode, we talked about helping students with intellectual and developmental disabilities, highlighting the Options program out at Eastside Catholic. Wonderful to see that program in action. National figures are showing this is rising too. More kids in Catholic schools have diagnosed disabilities. I know this is really in its beginning stages in the Western Washington area, but can you talk about the work you're doing to try to serve students with these disabilities?
Yes, this is definitely a priority for us here in Catholic schools, and we are, as you mentioned, actively pursuing some resources in this area, and we need to grow in this area. We want to serve all children. And so how do we do that? So one of the things we did this year is we partnered with an organization called Inclusion Solutions, and they are expert consultants that have worked with our teacher leaders, our principals, around how do we expand the breadth of student learning that we serve, and trying to, again, adapt our classrooms to be able to meet the needs of more students. So through this work with Inclusion Solutions, it's really challenged us to think out of the box. And I think that's
a good challenge to take on, an
Catholic
important one to take on.
Schools are really known for that. We have been so successful in our history in this country of serving immigrant communities where you'd think, gosh, what resources do we have? Catholic schools, we figure it out. I think that resilience and that grit, it's part of our educational DNA. We're just going to go at it. We don't have it all figured out. We're not going to say that we do. But what we're going to do is we're going to take steps that move us towards that. And we're going to learn along the way. So really, it's to serve students with neurodiversities. We want our teachers to be educated so they understand what this looks like and understand the pathway to learning that this student needs. So we have taken a deep dive with Inclusion Solutions. And like I said, we're just hoping to be able to just widen that breadth year over year.
Thank you for that. And we can't let the kids have all the fun here. We're going to talk about the work behind the scenes to recruit teachers and keep them on the job. That's coming up next on The Fulcrum Point.
My name is Benjamin, and I'll be a senior at Bishop Blanchette High School. The thing I like most about Catholic education is the sense of community and the care and support provided by each of the teachers.
Welcome back to The Fulcrum Point. I'm Brian Callanan, and I'm talking with Kristen Moore, Director of Marketing for the Office for Catholic Schools within the Archdiocese of Seattle. And we've been talking about how the Office for Catholic Schools is recruiting and retaining students, but it's also working to do that with teachers too. And in talking with you during the show, I've just been struck by this idea that it's not a fancy marketing plan. You said that earlier, just how you're changing schools from the inside out. Can you talk about that work that you're doing there and how you're getting that buy-in, I guess, not just from teachers, but from the office staff that is on the front desk and so forth,
Right.
because it really does sound like a culture change almost.
And we're really taking a holistic approach to this and to growing a school and advancing a school. We have programs for teachers to dive into best practices, strategies. We talked about a few of those already.
Yeah.
But there's another group in our Catholic schools, the non-teaching staff, that are really critical to both the school culture and also to just efficiencies and the running, the everyday of the school. And the non-teaching staff, we actually came up, this will be our 4th year, we're hosting an Inspire conference.
Yeah, tell me about that.
This is just gone far beyond
Yeah.
what I originally dreamed up for
Yeah,
this.
no
And I think
good deed goes unpunished,
that's
it sounds
right.
like
I
on
mean,
this one. Yeah.
And it's just been amazing, the support for this event. So how it started very organically. I'm out at 74 different schools hearing very similar challenges and also realizing so many key staff really don't have any formal training per se or professional development opportunities.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, these are essential staff for the growth of a school.
Yeah.
We're talking the office manager, the secretary, the finance manager, who's having very sensitive tuition assistance conversations with families. We're talking about development director, marketing, communications, and certainly, most certainly, the admissions director.
Sure.
So oftentimes there's not necessarily a professional development track for these folks. And so that is part of my work after being hired by Fulcrum to create that for this group.
Yeah.
And so this fabulous annual event
Yeah.
called Inspire came to be. And what it is, we've had this great partnership with Seattle University.
Right.
They have been essential to really growing this, and I'm so grateful.
Yeah, a 2-day conference coming up in
Right.
August at Seattle U, right?
Exactly, the 6th and the 7th of August. And
Okay.
I bring in keynote speakers for each day and breakout sessions for the rest of the afternoon. And I have people coming in from all over the United States. We have topics certainly directed specifically towards admissions, towards hospitality in the front office, to best practices around tuition assistance conversations and allocations. We have topics on how to deal with difficult situations, difficult interactions, personal interactions.
Does that actually happen in schools?
Oh,
No
it
way.
does.
Okay.
It does.
Just checking.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
for sure. But, how do we work through those situations and not be defeated by them? How do we take the higher road in some of those difficult, sensitive topics? So, we all need to grow and learn. And I think really the key here for us in Catholic schools is that is our priority. We're going to continue to grow and learn and develop. We're not going to become stagnant. So this conference really just infuses innovation into our mission work.
And I thought this was really interesting. Any Catholic school staff, so non-teaching and admissions, marketing, et cetera, as we've been talking about here, from inside and outside the Archdiocese of Seattle are invited to come. Are you giving away all the secrets to the kingdom? What's going on here, Kristen?
Well, you know what? Word's gotten out.
Yeah, I
Word has
guess.
gotten out. And it really was just through, I'm in a few national professional learning groups that I have colleagues across the country. And I've been so excited to share this. And because of that, people have come from as far as the Archdiocese of Washington, D.C. We have California, anywhere in the Midwest. I mean, now we have people coming from all over the country to attend this. This conference is laser focused on operational vitality. How can we continue to innovate so that we can be the best educational institution that we can be?
And it's free for schools within the Archdiocese,
Yep,
right?
absolutely free.
Wow.
And they can even relive their college days and spend the night in the dorms at Seattle U if
Ooh,
they
there
want to
you
spend the
go.
night.
Oh,
So
man.
it's a full meal deal here at Inspire.
I'll take grilled cheese and tater tots.
That's
can't wait.
right.
That sounds great. I did want to jump back on a point we were talking about earlier, how the Office for Catholic Schools is reaching out to Latino students that are learning another language for the
Yes.
first time. You brought up the ALMA initiative, the Advanced Latino and Multilingual Achievement Program there that's focused on helping underserved Catholic schools. I wanted to talk about this from the teacher perspective because I think this is an important part of this too. Can you break that down, please?
Absolutely. Now when you're talking about English language learners, it used to be English as a second language. But for some of our students, English is not a second language. It could be a third language, for example. So the terminology has changed a little bit. Now it's English as a new language. Language strategies, if you think about a child, even an English-speaking child starting school, they're still learning the language, right? I mean, a kindergartner's vocabulary is much different than an eighth grader's vocabulary. So in reality, all of our students are English language learners. Particularly for someone who has a second language, there are strategies in the classroom that's very, very helpful. So one example I would give would be if you're learning vocabulary, and it could be math vocabulary, having some visual cues in your classroom are key. Those visual cues are essential for a non-English speaking student, but they're absolutely going to enrich an English language student's experience as well. When they can have a visual cue, again, they're having a visual, they're hearing it, that again is going to solidify that vocabulary a little bit stronger.
Okay.
So the practices that we have for English learners really apply to all of our students. So I think we're diving into this when we think about our Latino students specifically, but the work and the learnings that the teachers are gaining benefit all.
That's
beauty.
important. And I think, too, it's trying to have, in terms of recruiting Latino teachers, is that happening as well?
Absolutely a priority for us, and we have a ways to go there as well. Our students need to see reflections of themselves.
Yeah.
They really do. And so we're regularly having conversations around what can we do to recruit Latino teachers as well. One of the programs that we've also partnered with under the ALMA initiative is LEAD.
Okay.
And it's specifically for Latino leaders. So it's identifying someone in your building. Let's say it's an aide, kindergarten aide, phenomenal Latina. This is a program for them to pursue at Notre Dame for a certificate to really inspire them to consider moving on and taking on a leadership role within their school. So we're trying to create pathways for some of our current staff that we hope also then will welcome some new folks.
And I did want to get into this in terms of the support that you give to teachers. And I think the idea is, and we've talked about this with so many different Fulcrum Foundation programs that are involved with this, helping hundreds of teachers throughout the region here over the past several years. How do you find these teachers who want to take it to the next level, who want to be that leader, maybe a principal even? Because I know there's a big push to push people up the ranks too. Can you talk about that? Because I know that you in your past life at St. Mary Magdalene up in Everett, we'll give them a shout. You worked with this and helped hire people. You were a development director yourself, and so you helped with the hiring of a principal and teachers and things of that nature. Can you talk about that, how you encourage and inspire people?
Really, it's a personal ask. It's identifying those leadership skills, seeing that in someone else and saying, I could see you being a leader in this school. So it's that personal invitation that is so powerful. And, when someone, let's say it's a principal who sees that in one of their staff members and has that conversation with them and says, I see something in you and I see the potential, changes everything.
I wanted to make sure I touched on this program you've been working on to help recruit more teachers. I think that the Shea Foundation is involved with that too.
They are.
I wanted to make sure I touched on that.
Yes.
That sounded like a pretty powerful partnership.
Pretty incredible. The Shea Foundation has done, my gosh, incredible work throughout the country with Catholic schools. Absolutely dedicated to the mission of Catholic schools, and I'm eternally grateful for their support. This is wonderful because they've done some work in capital projects in some of our schools here in the Archdiocese. So we've seen the fruits of that generous donation already. But now there's even another pathway with Shea, and the University of Notre Dame received a grant from Shea to help fund these programs that I've mentioned, many of which I've mentioned during this podcast already, and fund it for our schools in Seattle so that anyone who wants to participate in any of the ALMA initiatives can do so tuition free. So a big shout out to Shea.
That's a massive achievement
Big
there.
gift.
So I know there's a lot to talk about there with teachers and how they're changing so many things here, but I did want to make sure we got to the bottom line. How is this providing better outcomes for students? There's a lot more to this than what's on the report card. We're talking about that next on The Fulcrum Point.
Hi, my name is Katie. I'm a student at St. John's School. Catholic education is important to me because I learn all sorts of things about God, Jesus, and Mary. I attend church and I learn important things from the priest. That is why Catholic education is important to me.
Great to hear from some of our local students here on the Fulcrum Point, because at the end of the day, they are the reason Fulcrum is doing the work it does to support high-quality Catholic education. And I'm back with Kristen Moore, Director of Marketing for the Office for Catholic Schools within the Archdiocese of Seattle. That phrase student outcomes gets thrown around so much. I just wanted to figure out what that means to you and how you measure the impact of the programs that you're implementing.
Well, I can say this. We have a 99% high school graduation rate for kids going through Catholic schools.
Wow.
Amazing. I mean, that speaks for itself. Nationally, again, we're in the 90s across the board for graduation rates. I mean, that's very, very compelling. And I think that our students are prepared to go out both academically. I mean, they've got the formation that they need there. They've got the confidence from being in a supportive community, and they have an outward view, right? They realize they are a very important part of this world, and the work that they will do will impact change. So I think they're very, very well prepared. I think our students, we do regular testing. We're looking at their growth scores through their time with us. We're really dialed in. We have an amazing assistant superintendent, Dr. Justina King, who really monitors academic progress very closely. And then, of course, again, bringing some professional development in for teachers so that they can meet some of those expectations and take students where they're at and guide them forward is really a priority for us. Catholic schools really produce, and I would say most people, even maybe in the Pacific Northwest, know someone who's attended a Catholic school.
Yeah.
Catholic schools are the largest non-governmental school system in the world. That blows my mind, too, and I know that fact.
I feel like the work you're doing is aimed towards some bigger goals, too. We talked with the president of Cristo Rey Jesuit Seattle High School in our last episode. That school, of course, is serving people of lower incomes, helping families get students into college, and really trying to break a cycle of poverty that can create a massive change in our community. I'm really seeing this as Catholic education touching a lot of lives, not just one student's.
Affordability is top of mind for us as well. We know, parents, it's expensive, and costs of things are going up, and certainly a private education is a significant impact on the budget. So affordability, we're always trying to think, how can we address this? What can we do? How can we get creative around this? And what I love is we have a brand new high school, Cristo Rey High School, that really works with families that are low income, providing a Catholic education for them. It's spectacular. I love their model. I think it's so important to serve families, all families. And, our teams within our schools, often we're misunderstood thinking, oh, you have to have a lot of money to go to a Catholic school. We're mission-based. We're nonprofit. We are looking at an even bottom line. And we want to make sure that part of our mission is to have some economic diversity as well. And it's really important for us, and we work very, very hard through our tuition assistance programs, Fulcrum Foundation being a huge partner in that, to be able to give access to more students in our schools. We don't want finances to be a barrier to our schools. Education changes trajectories. I think it's the single most impactful thing we can do in our world today. When we think about all the things culturally that we're struggling with, if we could intervene earlier, if we can get to those kids earlier, if we can impact them, it could completely change some outcomes, negative outcomes that we see in just our immediate communities. So we need our public school counterparts. We can't take all the kids in our Catholic schools. We need to form a united educational community. And we are one piece of that. I think we're a very effective piece, an impactful piece. We're a different piece, than some of our counterparts. But we need each other because we need educated communities. And I think if we could all get behind that, I think about the Latino community specifically.
Yeah.
Catholic schools are such a beautiful fit for them. So why not? They're going to be more successful. Those students, their graduation rate skyrockets when they're in our Catholic schools. And that may be the right place for them. So to be able to think a little out of the box in terms of how our educational serves students, how this system serves students. Some students need something different, and to be able to have those options for our community is critical.
I feel like you're diving once again into this recipe of the secret sauce of Catholic education here. And as I start to wrap up with you, I did want to talk about that. So you got the high expectations for academics. You got the religious tradition involved. You got community service involved there. And I know our Catholic schools are not perfect. There's always work to be done there for sure. But they are growing. And it seems like more families are really wanting to engage with this and have their kids involved with Catholic education. So can you talk about that secret sauce a little bit more? Why do you think we're seeing this growth over the past 4 years in schools in Western Washington?
I do think that COVID was a moment for parents
It was for all
to
of us,
have a little insight into maybe what their children were experiencing in their current educational situations. Also, it was a pause for parents to take a look at their kids and say, wow, I'm seeing some things that maybe, we're spending a lot of time all together at home during this moment.
Yeah.
So, I think there was a lot there. People were unpacking, and I think maybe started to think of alternatives to their maybe current situation. But here's the thing. That was COVID. That was one moment in time. Our growth has been sustained over the last 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
We have reversed a probably 10-year plus trajectory of a 2.5% decline. So the fact that we have been positive for the past 4 years in terms of growth is really pretty exceptional. So something good is happening in our schools. There was an invitation for newcomers during COVID, and many of our schools' communities expanded. And we've been able to keep those families, and we've been able to grow with those families. They've been able to grow with us. And I think word has gotten out. Again, I think people are happy in our Catholic schools. I think families feel a sense of community so needed after that time in our schools. And we're delivering on our academic promises. So I think that's really been a huge part of it. I love that we have the spiritual component. I think we would be remiss as educators to leave that piece out. That's going to look different for different people. Academics, of course, we're an academic institution. That's expected. The community piece, most of our schools require community service hours. And actually, many of our schools require hours for our parents.
That's right.
And we know as educators from research that when parents are engaged in their child's education, things go much better.
Yeah.
right? All the way around.
Of course.
So having that piece where parents are engaged, there's a little bit of an expectation there, of course. That's just bringing them into this as well, because, parents are the primary educators, and we respect that. And we want them to be a part of their child's journey. It's essential for us. So I think all of these things, that is the secret sauce. I think many charter schools, non-parochial private schools have used a Catholic school model, but leaving a piece or two out.
Yeah.
And we still have outperformed them. So I think we've got it right.
Yeah. So far,
We're not
so
perfect,
good.
but we are moving in the right direction.
So far, so good. That's Kristen Moore, Director of Marketing for the Office for Catholic Schools within the Archdiocese of Seattle. Thanks for talking with me, Kristen.
You bet.
Thanks to everybody listening out there in podcast land to this episode of The Fulcrum Point, where we are discussing the impact of Catholic schools across Western Washington. Share this podcast with your friends. Subscribe on Apple, Spotify, wherever you like to listen. We are there. The show is brought to you by the Fulcrum Foundation. You can learn more about their work at fulcrumfoundation.org. I'm Brian Callanan, and it's been my pleasure to listen with you and learn. See you next time.